Our first interview this morning is all about land. So stay tuned as we engage our guests in a series of frequently asked questions about this topic. We are honored to welcome the Honorable Dr. Joyelle Clarke, Minister of Sustainable Development at Shez Dore-Tyson, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Sustainable Development, Austin Farier, Director of the Department of Physical Planning, and Dwight Francis, Director of the Department of Lands and Surveys. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. All right. Well, I love that because it's really exciting when we get to talk about something that's so very important to a lot of people.
Yes.
I want to begin by talking about the Land Matters Fair that was recently held. It seemed to be well attended from what I gathered, and I imagine people had a lot to ask. What was the impetus for that fair?
Minister?
We decided as a ministry that we needed to speak with the public, understand their concerns. In particular, we wanted to address some of the key challenges that the ministry and the departments within the ministry were experiencing, and that's persons who are either waiting forever for acknowledgement for a piece of land, or several persons who thought a lot of land belonged to them but recognized that it belonged to them plus other persons. So it was a public engagement session, and we wanted the public to recognize that we hear your concerns. We're working on our own internal issues to manage the allocation process, but we wanted to engage.
You mentioned one particular thing there I'd like to follow up on. With the persons who have the land and then it got sold again, how did you deal with that problem, or what ease or what peace of mind did you manage to give to them when they left the fair?
Well, we knew that once you talk to people, that in and of itself is providing them some peace of mind. So we recognize how important it was to have that exercise. We are still going through our internal processes in terms of looking at the double and triple bookings and connecting with persons who fall into that category before we decide this is the position, because of course you need the data to make a decision, an informed decision.
Okay.
Well, that's a very important point. One I'll also like to follow up on, because obviously, we had elections, you're new to the post, so there are a lot of things that I guess you're getting adjusted to as well. When we talk about these problems and these challenges, have you begun to look at the reason for these problems, the diagnosis?
Yes, we have, and I'll pass that question on to our permanent secretary and the technical questions on to the very capable directors behind us.
You're quite diplomatic.
So I'm in the spotlight with that. Haste. I'll just blame it on haste.
Okay.
A lot of things were done in a very short time. And when you do things in haste, there's always going to be a problem.
Yes.
And so we recognize 2022 was that troublesome period. As a matter of fact, most of the problems stem from 2022.
Okay.
So we are trying to iron out, as the minister said, it's not going to be immediate, and that is something we want the public to understand. It's not going to be an immediate solution. Okay. But now that we have harnessed the data, and we are still harnessing the data, because let me say at this point that the foot traffic hasn't stopped. Since that fear, it continues. So we are still doing a lot of work. Yesterday I was very embarrassed when I looked at my desk and I had visitors, because it doesn't look good, with the amount of information. So we are working on it, and in due time we'll be able to give an official report and decide where we're going to go forward with this matter. So the public will hear from us even further in due time.
All right, and just another follow-up question. Obviously, we're dealing with different entities that fall under the head of sustainable development. So has there been a problem that you've noticed with the allocation of land, say one entity is signing and they're not authorized to do that? Is that something that has happened that you've noticed?
I would say that what may have happened is that you had...
I'm sorry, your mic, please.
We have two different land agencies, and I think that is the root cause of the duplications and triplications. One agency would have given to John Brown, and the ministry would have also given to John Brown, and that would have spiraled into so many other issues. So it's not a matter of unauthorized, there was no proper communication between the two entities. I think that is really the problem.
No problem. So I'm going to go to planning right now. When we decide that we're going to distribute land, how is that done? And how do you decide where you're going to have land available for persons who may be interested?
So Let me get the question straight. How do we decide which lands are best suited for residential use?
Yes, residential or commercial.
So what we do, we collect data on lands, and basically we have a system called Geographic Information System, and that does a lot of the analysis work for us once you put the data in. We have a series of planners that read the information coming from the GIS, and they in turn decide which lands are best. It's technically the best and highest valued use of a particular parcel of land. If the land has good drainage, if the land has good fertility, it's most likely going to be used for agriculture. Lands that are close to amenities and infrastructure, we tend to use for housing. When it comes to commercial lands, we want the island to grow in a balanced form. And so we try to, we do 15-year plans, and these are development plans for the entire island where we see where the population is moving, so that's where the data comes, and we determine which communities or which towns need to have these necessary amenities to take the ease off of Bastille. What we found was Bastille is a place you go for most of your services, especially 80% of your services, and we were trying to offset that and put it in different communities that we determined to be growth poles. What we are doing right now in our office is trying to categorize areas as urban, suburban, and rural. And when you do that, you know basically what amenities should go where. Here's the issue. With the urban, we are going to propose smaller land parcels because it's a tight space. The suburban would have a lot bigger land parcels, especially for residential use, because it sets you back from the congestion. And it sets you back. You still have access and accessibility to the commercial areas, but the suburban areas tend to be a lot more quieter, a lot more less traffic. And then the rural areas you use for agricultural use and bigger land parcels. You wanna have a nice big piece of land. You're gonna put you in what you call a rural area, but it's not rural by the sense of the word. People think rural has bad connotations. Not really. It's where all the farms are. It's where all your food is.
Right, best place to be.
And the way we are trying to build around the country is to have market areas where the people in the rural areas get really closer to the markets. And the markets, then you use the transportation routes to bring the markets to the urban areas. So that is how we think based on my department. We see things through a 5-spectrum lens, which is the environmental. I'm a physical planner, so we see the physical aspect, which is the infrastructure. Then we have the economic and the social. Some people group it together, but we separate it because it's a 5-spectrum lens. And then the political, which is not what you think as in voting, but where is the population block that is of age to make decisions? What do they have? You understand? What do they need? Do they need fire services, hospital services, school services, that kind of stuff? Because that determines which areas are urban.
Okay.
So I hope I answered your question.
You sure did. You sure did.
And more.
It's long-winded, but I hope.
No, it wasn't at all. Very informative.
Definitely so, because we could jump off, have further discussions based on what you said. I want to talk a little bit about the farming. We're talking about lands, sustainable development. We're talking about food security and so on. Did you have anyone coming with questions at the land fair concerning access to land for farming, and how has that been received?
Oh yes, we had actually the exit data, because we had some exit data. We had 45 farmers inquiring. They had land concerns. Just about 2 weeks prior to that, I went, and I think Mr. Farier also, I took him with me. We went to the farmers meeting that the agriculture department had. So we have a very good relationship between that department. So the field, we had that aspect. Agriculture was one of the agencies we had at the fair on the 9th and 10th.
I think I'd also want to mention, as much as we're trying to solve the problems that Kitchens are experiencing, we must be very transparent about the problems that we are facing based on changes in use. And I allow, again, our technical experts to speak to this. We had several cases where persons were issued farmland leased, right, and transitioned over time to erecting structures. And Mr. Farier and Mr. Francis would explain why, if you are issued a piece of farmland, you ought not to transition to a permanent structure. We've also had persons who had land, didn't make the minimum payment, and started illegal construction, but cannot access electricity or water, because there are systems that you have to go through. And I think it is very important to speak to what's required of you to build a house in St. Kitts and Nevis. You get a piece of land, but how do you move from a land in your name to a house in your name? And I think that technical part is really important to prevent others from falling into the same problem and then having to come back to sustainable development. And then you're stuck in a 3-year problem because you broke several rules.
So obviously I'm a novice. I did not know that you cannot purchase land for agricultural use. I never knew it was leased. Can you speak to that?
No. Yes, that's a true statement, because the land was given to you for the production of food. And so it is earmarked as that is what it is zoned for agricultural purposes. Now, if you so as part of our policy, the land is leased to you on a long-term basis for you to assist with the production of food. If you do now go and build something on it, you're basically now doing something contrary to the agreement of you occupying the land. And that in itself is an issue, because for one thing, you're supposed to get planning permission. So you're supposed to go to the Department of Physical Planning to get planning permission to build a permanent structure on this land. And if you don't do that, then you're breaching one of the development control and planning codes. So that would be an issue for you.
Oh, so then you have to break that structure down.
Eventually, you would have to break that structure down.
That's fair.
It's so many of these.
Wow.
Yeah, I was really going to ask about well, you said so many. I was going to ask about that too. How frequent is that, and what is the recourse that you have?
Very often.
But are the farmers informed? Sorry about cutting you off. Are they informed that they're not supposed to build additional structures and just use the land for agriculture?
Yes, it's in their lease agreement.
Oh, so they disobeyed that.
Yes.
Okay.
So where do we go from here, Mr. Farier?
Enforcement.
And education.
So what does enforcement entail? And we'll get to the education shortly thereafter.
So we are governed at the department by the Development Control and Planning Act. We have to follow that act precisely. And the Ministry of Legal and Justice ensures that the rights of citizens are not infringed. So I can't just get up and do what I feel like. So I have to follow the details in the act when it comes to enforcement. You have to constantly inform these persons who are non-compliant of the issues. They have specific instructions, so I can't even modify the instructions. There are specific instructions given to those people. There are specific times to rectify the issue given to the non-compliant. And at the end of the day, we are hoping that they either obey or we have to enforce. When it comes to enforcement, we are given the right to, technically under the Act, enact our request, and then basically there's offenses that needs to be applied. And most of these offenses have to go through the court system. So it is a very tedious process, and that is why at times we as planners, we have a lot of social skills, so they ask us to implement voluntary compliance. We go and we speak to the people. We are problem solvers, so we go and we sit down and we ask, so what do you want to do? You want residential lands? I will put you on to the parent ministry that can supply that. You want to have some protection because predial lasting is one of the major deterrents for agriculture. You are allowed to build temporary structures. What people don't realize, ranches are not permanent structures, ranches are made of wood. They're temporary structures. Yeah. Because just in case you're not utilizing the land properly, there are other farmers that want to that would love to get a chance at this. Yeah. And so just let your lease, just end your lease or let your lease run out. Or do something at least, and so you get somebody else a chance. Because what we are finding is that agricultural lands are bigger plots. Yes. They're like quarter-acre plots to start with. you don't have quarter-acre plots for residential use. They're smaller plots.
Okay.
So you have a bigger plot, and you're paying agricultural lease fees, which are cheaper. And so it's very attractive to build your home there, but you can't.
Okay.
And what you also need to appreciate is that by putting a permanent structure on that plot, putting yourself in a predicament where the access to infrastructure going to be a problem for you, because that area is not zoned for that, for one, and therefore the development plans for that area would not really necessarily facilitate you getting the right amount of water, the access to roads, proper roads, and the installation of electricity.
Okay.
So that creates so you're basically creating a problem for yourself.
Plenty problems.
And while we're on that topic, what we also need to consider is that we are now having a big issue with the squatters. And as we see from my department, as we go around the island, we realize that there are more and more squatter settlements that are, forming on the island, and we really want to ask persons, if you want a piece of land, do it the right way. Come in and apply for the land, and then the ministry will see what we can do. In some instances, I want to piggyback onto the whole issue that we're now dealing with Lagweed. As we would know, Lagweed started out as an agricultural settlement.
Yes.
But if you go up there now, you wouldn't believe that, because of the amount of persons who now occupy those lands up there.
Yes.
And from a ministry's point of view, what we're now trying to do is regularize that settlement.
Okay.
Because what we realize is that, yes, based on the amount of persons living there, it can no longer be agricultural. So we have already submitted to Development and Control and Planning Board for a change of use from agriculture to residential.
Okay.
And by doing that, what we have decided to do is to now make the roads and the infrastructure and the utilities conform to the government standards.
Okay.
And one of the ways we had to do that, we had to ensure that the roads are now the appropriate width. And we have also gotten the input from the fire department to ensure that the roads are the appropriate width. We have also gotten input from SKN to ensure that the verges are now large enough to facilitate their electricity poles. The water department already had an input. So by having this discussion with all these different entities, we then created a plan for Lagweed, for the regularization of the Lagweed settlement. We then had to submit this plan to Development Control and Planning Board for passing, to ensure that once Lagweed is finished and is regularized, they can now enjoy proper roads, proper electricity, proper water, and a better standard of living. So that is one of the things that we try to do to ensure that we can lift all of our people and get them out of poverty, and also give them a way to build wealth.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Could I mention at this time that all that we are saying here is part of an overall project that the ministry has undertaken.
Okay.
We call it the Land Project.
Okay.
Land. It's an acronym, actually.
Okay.
Land Allocation, Normalization, and Distribution Project. So we are reorganizing the system,
Yes.
more or less, right? And this is where all of this is falling under. So the fear was part of it. The outreach that we are doing is part of it. The education is part of it. It comprises several areas. Okay, so this month, February, is supposed to be our outreach. It's almost finished. The month is almost finished, but we are going to continue because we realize that it was much more than we expected. So we're going to continue the outreach. We're going to have community programs. We're going to meet with the community people, different organizations. Education is going to be very important. Sometimes people do things and they don't know. But if you're educated, it should bring a change of behavior. Yes. So we believe that if people are aware, made aware, we should have a reduction in some of the issues that we are currently facing. And the minister can always elaborate.
Well, I'm actually stunned by what you said, Mr. Francis, about squatting becoming a major problem.
It is. It is. They're popping up all over on the riverbanks.
Yes, you see what you have to understand that once the sugar industry closed, the cane lands, the fertile lands began turning back to the virgin state of forest, and persons figure that they can just go and take a piece. And by using the forest itself, the vegetation, they start to build behind these vegetation. And that is why the ministry, we are now looking at ways in which we can monitor this process. So the ministry has embarked on giving both our departments drones to ensure that we can keep monitoring the use of the lands and who are occupying the lands and so forth, because squatting is a problem. It's not just a social problem, but it's also an economic problem. Yes. Because you then create settlements or slum settlements, and then that create another issue for all of us in the community. And then we also have to go and regularize that process. One of the issues we're seeing is that persons begin squatting near to the gut sites. That in itself is a major problem for you, because let's say we have a 50-year storm, and then the guts start running more than what we used to. House. And it damage your house, you might be in there sleeping, then lives are lost. Yes. And then the whole country have to grieve. Yes. And then, so we really want to beg of persons, if you want a piece of land, come in, let us go through the application process and see how we can assist you in being on one of our regularized developments.
I like that.
And I have to mention too that what we're trying to do is to change the face of the ministry. We want people to understand that the ministry is here to help. We are not a monster. We want to make it community friendly, people friendly. The ministry is here to serve. And so you have an issue, you come in and you speak to us. So you don't stay there and build in the gut, and then next thing you know, some storm comes and then you hear some family went down. You understand? Because it becomes everybody's problem if something like that happens. So our whole outlook at how we are approaching land distribution going forward, this is what we are trying to do at this time.
So how does one move the squatters from the areas that they would have taken up if they would have built a structure already?
Well, if I may, I want to reference some actions in other governments. In Jamaica, for example, I think if there was a case where people built 3-4-story homes on land that wasn't sold through the government processes, they were all bulldozed and removed. Ooh. There are cases in some parts of Africa, in some countries, where squatters' settlements are what we call tenement yard, are just, random settlements are just bulldozed. Wow. In our case, because we, as the PS rightly said, we are using the engagement approach. Instead of asking everyone to move from where you are, we're trying to normalize the settlements for safety. Everything that Director Francis mentioned in terms of the roads and electricity, all that speaks to your safety and the security of your home. So we have decided that the best approach is to engage with our squatters. Now, Farier mentioned, I think he mentioned to me that there is a need for us to have the legislation that then prevents squatting, but regularizes how we move forward with providing access to land. Recognize also that land it's almost our right as Kitishans, and it's something that everybody, rightfully so, wants to have a piece of land. It's your security, and it's security not just for you, for your life now, but for intergenerational security and intergenerational wealth, which the government is committing to create, to empower people through that, through access to land. So when you squat, or when you get a piece of land and you don't pay and you decide to build, we also recognize that it's out of a need. I don't think people are just so wicked that they're going to just say, I'm taking this land and I don't care what they want to do. Yes. It's a desperate need to have something. We want to ensure that everyone can have something, but remember that St. Kitts and Nevis is only so big. So we also have to engage the public, and this is where education is needed in rethinking how an ideal home is. Everybody wants a half-acre plot with 5 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms and a garage and a basement. That's not the ideal for the Caribbean. Yes. That's not the ideal for St. Kitts and Nevis, where land isn't. Right? Yes. So we want to consider vertical structures. We want to consider multiple dwellings or duplex or a different notion, and smaller spaces, because we are taking up a lot more space as man, and this is general about how we occupy planet Earth, that we need to be more conscious of how we live. We're spreading out across the earth and we're not mindful that we have limited resources. We have 30% of the earth is land. So in St. Kitts and Nevis, we don't have land that's just spreading all over. There's a need to rethink how our ideal home look and how our what everybody says, oh, your dream house.
Yes.
Your dream house could be a dream condo or a dream apartment that's vertical, or your dream house could be a tiny living apartment. Or if your dream house is a 5-bedroom house, then you would have to give us some time, or you might have to buy private land, right? But we want everybody to have access to land, but it means that we'll have to rethink what access looks like.
So during the break, we were speaking, well, Dr. Clarke mentioned wanting land to put down your 5-bedroom house, but then Jay mentioned that we may not have that much land to allocate. So can we speak to that? And then Jamie also mentioned a highway that's going to go from the town to St. Paul's and that planning. Can we also speak to that as well?
Okay. Let me start with the highway. Okay. As for the highway, it's an ongoing process. Okay. Because we collect data every day. And so we use the data to determine what's the best route for something like that. And then that has to be discussed, that has to be analyzed, because the implications. Okay. Highways attract development. And so it's not just going to have to be a highway. Where is the best place to put a highway and at the same time attract the necessary amenities? Because with highways come service corridors. You're gonna need, it's gonna need to be lighted. Eventually, Skelec is going to want to put underground cables there to supply different areas with electricity via that highway. These are perfect service corridors for water, electricity, telecommunications. So all these complex situations you have to take into consideration. As for land for housing, we already know the soil types and everything, what lands are suitable. Housing gives those lands the best and highest valued use. But you could put housing anywhere. But you don't want to put housing on agricultural lands. Okay. And you don't want to put housing in areas that are more suitable for commercial use, because you need commercial use. And one of the issues that shows that you need commercial use was COVID. Where did you go to the supermarket? Was there a supermarket in your community? Or did you have to jump into your car and go all the way in another town? And so you really want these communities to be self-reliant and self-sustainable. And that is our role as planners, to make sure that each community has the necessary amenities that they can thrive on their own. Okay. Or there are amenities within maybe a 10-minute walk, or a 3-mile drive. In the case of health facilities, they're within a 3-mile radius. And a lot of people don't realize that, but they're placed there on purpose. So you have access. Everyone has access within a 3-mile radius of these facilities. So when it comes to land, what we have found at the planning department, living on an island, we don't have a lot of land for residential use to spare. So what we have to consider now is how to accommodate as much persons as possible with as little land as possible. And so that will mean increasing the densities, as the minister said, going upwards, vertical housing. And maybe vertical zoning in terms of providing the amenities in this vertical structure, like the commercial amenities. And so you have this sort of all for one. You can access your commercial, access your health facilities, but still live in a building. These are under consideration.
Yeah, very good considerations indeed.
Yes.
I would have to tell you, in listening to you, I wasn't aware that you did so much.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to, and this is right down the minister's alley. A lot of these developments going forward has to be climate resilient. Okay. It makes no sense to build something and between June and October it gets wiped away. And that's hurricane season. And so it's very important that we do everything to code, we review the codes, and we make sure that when we put development down, when we put infrastructure and utilities down, they can survive the impacts of what the climate brings to us in terms of increased storms, increased drought, a need for energy, lack of supply chains. All this you have to factor in. It's a complex web, but I have the support of an entire ministry. Everything is connected. That's what a lot of people don't realize. For us, everything is connected. That's why we see things through a 5-spectrum lens.
I think it's important, and thank you, Farier, for mentioning that, to comment on the fact that the government, through the leadership of the National Housing Corporation and the Minister of Human Settlement, Dr. Hanley, our Deputy Prime Minister, is leading on what we are calling our second housing revolution. And I want to say today that Cabinet's commitment to NHC for this process was we're going to build using that same 5-spectrum from planning unit. We're not just giving out a 5,000 square foot piece of lot. We're making sure that you have enough land for a small backyard farm or for raised beds, that we want our developers and investors to come with solar options for our homes, that we want to climate proof our homes, that there must be water harvesting. Now, when we say this to a young mother with, let's say, 3 children, we're giving you a house. Now, we could give you a $150,000 house, or we can give you a $250,000 house, which is climate proof, which means your children can occupy that house, which means you're not going to have a high water bill. And as our Minister of Energy, Mr. Conway Maynard, committed to us, that in 5 to 7 years, our renewable energy transition means you're not getting an electricity bill that's $350, but the government is making a commitment to giving you energy security, water security, and even addressing food security, as Mr. Samuel Duggins mentions all the time, that we need to ensure that people can provide for themselves. So if there is a pandemic, if there is a climate crisis, we don't need to wait on tropical coming from, and this is not hitting tropical, we don't need to wait on a container of food coming to St. Kitts and Nevis, but we can plant in our yards. So it's a holistic system when it comes to housing and land, because ultimately, people want land for houses, and we want to create the security as we transition to a sustainable island state. All the ministers are on board, and of course, who is championing this?
Of course, the Ministry of Sustainability.
Right.
Yes, we are key ministry. Yes, and sometimes we call ourselves the mother ministry. Yes, we are key ministry. And so I'm glad that I have all my team, the minister, of course, and then I have my directors at the back here. We work together, we work well, and we want people to understand that this is what the ministry is. Ministry is not about taking over your land. That's not what we are. That's not the face that we want to portray. It's about helping, it's about building, it's about the future. That's what the Ministry of Sustainable Development is about.
Okay. So I want to know, if I wanted a piece of land, what are the requirements, what are the processes that I would have to go through, or someone else that may want land as well?
Okay, first of all, you don't have to come to me.
Okay.
And you don't have to go to the minister. We want people to understand that it's a system, it's a process. And so you come to the ministry and you get a form.
Okay.
Yes, so you fill the form in, and all we require you to do is to attach your ID, a copy of your ID. So you fill the form in. And then the process happens. We acknowledge your application, and then when the time is right, land is being distributed. For example, in Keon, you requested, then we look at the list of the persons who requested in Keon. And we have 400 persons. How many lots do we have? The process happens. Okay, now what we must say, a lot of people say, I've been trying for many years. When is it going to be my turn? Yes, that was the most popular question.
You're reading my mind.
Unfair. How can I own land? I've been coming for 5 years and no response. I heard a lot of that. And I said to them, now we are going forward. We are doing things more transparently, right? So you're going to get faster response from the ministry. So after the process is finished, you are notified. And then what you find is a lot of people choose to purchase through salary deductions, and that takes time. We have quite a number of individuals now, the professionals who are coming forward, and they are bankables. They say, listen, we have the loan already secured, we're ready to go. And so we are now looking at these people, right? So as we go forward, we're going to get it right. I'm getting it done faster. The process must be faster.
May I also add that in terms of getting Right. And improving the efficiency of the land allocation process. We have already been in conversation with our partners, Republic of China and Taiwan, who assisted with our land registry, which is the end of the land allocation process. You have your certificate of title, etc., the land registry. And we have been in conversation about improving the front end of this application process, and that's making it more user-friendly. As the Minister of Technology has committed, the Honorable Congress Maynard, to the digital transformation of government, we recognize that there is a need to digitize the land application process. And that simplifies the process, and it also makes you feel like you have some control over where you are. You apply online, you can track your application and then move to what Dwight should probably speak about, sorry, Mr. Francis, a cadastral system for St. Kitts and Nevis, and explain to us how that would solve a lot of the problems we have in terms of who has the land, where's the land, one person to a lot. That really should be our motto, one person, one lot.
You're in the hot seat.
So we, as a ministry, we have already started doing our background work on the preparation of the cadastre. We have already, what we have decided to do, one of the things that is critical is to ensure that the standards of the information that is presented to government and to the land registry is improved on. And as part of one of the projects in the Department of Land and Surveys, we are about to put down some what you call continuous operating reference stations. Some stations around the island that would continuously give geographic information, so that persons can then know the coordinates of their property corners. And then once everyone conforms to that one system, we can then map all the properties on the island and then put it in a system that can be managed properly. And then that way we can get a better understanding of how our land is being utilized, because we know the location of everything.
Yeah, okay.
That's a lot of work, a lot of information.
It's a lot of work, yes. It's a lot of work.
What I just said is a competent team, so.
I always think I have the best team. I tell them that I have the best team.
Your PS. I was recalling to the PS that this morning I read a message from her about how much work the ministry has been doing since the land fair, and why today the ministry is going to be having a special celebration, and I allow her to speak about it.
But it's just it's African liberation, our Heritage Day. Okay. And so this afternoon we just decided to just step back a little bit, because really the work has been overwhelming.
Okay.
As I tell you, I really don't want anybody to come to my office. I can't. My 3 desks are piled because the public has been coming, and I must thank the public for the response. It has been overwhelming, and it really proves that there is an issue.
Okay.
So it's not just in our minds.
Yes.
There is an issue, and the fair proved it. So this afternoon we're not going to have our regular ministry function. We're just going to have a little breather, a little step back, and we're going to have a little program in our ministry about for our heritage. Gives us a breather.
Well, clearly well deserved.
It's really too much. It's really, quite a lot.
Well, before we let you go, I'd like to give you an opportunity to say anything else that's important that perhaps we didn't get to, Minister.
Right. Well, I want to say, thank you for having us for this is half an hour now. It means that you understand the importance of land. It's our heritage. It's our right. It connects us to who we are, and it also represents for a lot of families the stability for the future for their children, and we recognize and appreciate that, and we want to make access fair. We want to depoliticize the process, and we want to normalize the process. As the PS said, it is not something that is going to happen overnight. We know that quite a few persons, and they stop us in the street every single day. Yesterday, when can I pay for my land? We want to make sure that when you make your payments for your land, it's your land.
Your land, yes.
And that's why we put a pause on the payment. It's frustrating persons, it's frustrating us. But we want to tell the general public that very shortly, we are going to announce when you can resume payment for your land, and this is going to coincide with addressing all the double booking and triple booking. No one is going to be disenfranchised. Everyone is going to have access to their land. Everyone.
Okay, good stuff.
I just want to thank the team at the ministry. The minister would have spoken to the public, but I have to thank the team. We can't do this. I couldn't have done it alone as a PS. The minister couldn't have done it alone. It took a cohesive effort, and we have a very strong team at the ministry. And I want to thank and let them know how much I appreciate the effort that they've put. You know, I mean, we're there until after 6, after 7.
Wow.
Yes, especially since the fear.
Oh, wow.
It really has been very tough. So my directors are here, and when I go back again, I'm going to always, I always thank my team for the effort and the support that they give as we go forward with a new initiative, a new plan, a new vision for land ownership in St. Kitts.
Thank you.
Yes, I once again want to thank you for having us, and I also want to express my gratitude to the Minister and the Permanent Secretary for allowing us to really manage the process of this land distribution system. I also want to thank my individual staff. I know those are the persons who actually do the hard work.
Yes.
Because, as you would know, there are a lot of developments throughout the island, and for most of the developments in terms of the assistance with roads and so forth, that is the responsibility of my staff, and I really want them to know that I appreciate what they do, and they would be commended at all times.
Yes.
So what we also, moving forward though, what I really want the general public to also know is that we all want piece of land, but when you get the land, please try your best to pay for it. It is more important to pay even $10 per week for the land than to don't pay anything at all.
Indeed.
You understand? So just show a bit of appreciation and just pay for the land.
Okay.
That way we can all improve our lives, because that money now can then be used for installing the infrastructure, and then all of us can live a better life. Okay?
And if you're having a problem, come and see us. Come and see us.
Not you directly, but come and see.
Come and see the ministry.
Okay.
Have a conversation with somebody in the ministry. Listen, I'm having this challenge. I'm paying, but I can't pay for the last 6 months. I've lost my job. Could you say something? Say something.
All right. Jay, any last words?
Yes, I want to thank y'all for having this opportunity to come here, because we at the department feel that informed citizens make better decisions.
Very much so.
Less enforcement work on our part, because it's an ugly activity to enforce. I want to thank the staff at the Department of Planning. I want to thank the staff at the ministry. Without them, it's overwhelming work. And I'm not exaggerating when I say everything is connected. Our decisions have implications. Our decisions at the department have implications on land, have implications on the minister's ability to make decisions. And so it sometimes can get very tough, but because I have a support of a very strong ministry, at any point in time I can depend on anybody. And my staff is very, very versatile. If someone goes down, it gets harder, but they fit in because that's the way they've been trained. And so I just want to, once again, thank the minister, thank the permanent secretary for having this opportunity to come here. Thank you for having this opportunity to come here. And I want to end by telling the general public and reiterate what the permanent secretary said. We are very accessible at the Department of Planning. We have a technical knowledge. We are planners, so if you want to do something with commercial, you want to do a business, you want to build your home, just come and ask a question. It's for free. I'm a civil servant. I'm here to serve the public. You know how much this costs on the outside? Yeah. It's for free.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that. People think that we are actually doing it. It's for free.
Okay.
It's our job. We love to help you because it's less work on the back end.
Yeah, okay.
That makes a lot of sense. And thank you so much for clarifying a lot of our concerns, a lot of our viewers' concerns.
And I hope we come back sometime, because I still don't want the public to think that the ministry is only about land.
Oh, okay.
We do so much more. So another time we'll come and explain what are some of our other things.
I will definitely go out on a limb and say you have an open invitation.
Yes, indeed.